It's all you here.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, thanks so much for jumping on. It's fun to be with you. I'll give you a quick overview of my background. I've worked with athletes, coaches for the last 10 years with Athletes in Action here in Austin, Texas, at the University of Texas. If you're familiar with Kevin Durant, that's the university he went to. He didn't last long because he was so good. He was here for about a semester and a half, and obviously he's had a great career. But we get to work with a lot of really high level athletes. And so with that, a lot of them have gone on to play in the Olympics or compete in the Olympics, play professionally. And so that's opened doors to work with different athletes and different teams or national teams. One of the things that's really fun about uh, working with athletes and coaches is you realize it doesn't matter who they are, what level. If you're a human being, you all have the same needs. And that's what we're going to really talk about today when we talk about this idea of resilience. And so where we're going to go is we're going to talk about an unpredictability. We live in a world that's unpredictable, which creates all kinds of emotions and feelings. And if we don't have a place to take those, a secure place to attach those to, it's going to wreak havoc in our life and our performance. And so when we figure out, okay, how do I find a secure place to attach these to, I become healthy, which produces resilience. So that's an overview because we're going to be covering a lot of different things.
Hey,
Please put
DJ,
any questions in the chat as we go.
I'm going to interrupt and
Okay.
say, could you repeat that a little more? Your key points and just with it being an international audience, so a reminder to
Talk slow. That's right. The New Yorker in me, I get going fast. Okay. So here's what we're going to talk about. We live in a world that is full of unpredictability. You guys are probably very much aware of this. In fact, I recently heard someone say, we live in one of the most unpredictable times in the history of the world. At first, I thought, do I agree with that? There's always been change, which is true, but I would argue that we experience more unpredictability now than ever before because of the amount of access we have information, how much information we have access to, but also the speed in which it comes at us. Does that make sense? So let me give you some examples. If you were alive 40 years ago, you probably never would have thought the Iron Curtain would fall. It's unpredictable. 25 years ago, if you were alive and you're living, and someone were to tell you, hey, there's going to be two commercial airlines that fly into two buildings, unpredictable. No one would have predicted something like that would happen, and then change, you know, how we travel the rest of our life. This whole idea of security and going to a sporting event, there's security. We're always on edge. 5 years ago, if someone had told you there's going to be a worldwide pandemic that shuts down the whole world, we couldn't have fathomed that something like that would happen. And what I'm saying is we live in so many unpredictable things are happening. But let me give you some smaller examples of how this plays out, maybe on our level, our day-to-day level. The idea of marriage. We're living in a time where less people are married than ever before. And so unpredictable, right? People see marriage as something that used to be seen as secure, something that lasts for a while, families are built out of. Now we have the highest divorce rates ever. Jobs, more people switch jobs than ever before. I mean, I can't tell you how many, my father-in-law, he worked at one place 35 years, how common that was for an older generation. Now, I think the average lifespan for someone at a job is 3 years. Unpredictable. Here today, gone tomorrow. Stock market. I don't know what it's like other places. In America, one tweet, one breaking news thing, the stock market is going all over the place. But it also is unpredictable in the world of sports. I mean, just think about some of the ways sports has adapted and how fast it has the last couple of years. I think about even this week, at least in America, every week there's a new college football coach getting fired. Unpredictable. You're here, you sign a big contract, and boom, you're gone. In college sports in America, the idea of name, image, likeness, college athletes make a ton of money or can. It's produced all kinds of unpredictability. If you're an NBA fan, Luka Doncic, who would have ever thought in our time a superstar athlete would get traded? A franchise player out of nowhere. And then even last week, 31 NBA players got arrested for sports gambling and some other illegal things. Unpredictable. No one saw that coming, especially some of the high profile athletes. Today, we live in a society where one tweet, one social media post can make you famous or fired. We are living in unpredictable days. So that's the case I'm trying to build. And why I say that is because I want to share with you today how to face unpredictability with resilience. In a world that's ever changing at such a rapid pace, how can you, as coaches and leaders, build resilient champions in both sport and life? And so I want to start with a story. 1983, Australia hosted the first ever ultra marathon. It was called the Sydney to Melbourne Ultra. Now, if you've ever ran a marathon, I haven't. I've watched my wife. They're long, and 26.2 miles. It's a lot. Ultra marathons are insane. In fact, this ultra marathon spanned over 540 miles. So it didn't take hours, it took days to complete. And as a result, it required a ton of planning just and because there are so many things to factor in. And so you had to think about food, water, where were you going to sleep? Where were you going to rest? When were you going to do this? How many shoes am I going to bring? Clothing. So it was called at the time the most grueling race on the face of the earth. So as a result, most of the runners competing were pretty young, their 20s, 30s, professional runners, Olympic runners, all flocked to Australia to be part of this race. But that particular year, there was a man by the name Cliff Young. He was a 60-something-year-old potato farmer who decides to sign up for the race. And so before long, everyone's getting ready to line up. The race is about to start. Again, you've all these runners in their sneakers and everything. And there you have Cliff Young in his rubber boots and overalls lined up at the start line. The gun goes off, all the runners go, and Cliff is just shuffling his feet quickly in last place. So much so that all of the people watching begin laughing, thinking that this is some kind of promotional joke. Well, fast forward a couple days, here's what begins to happen. The normal regimen for the race was you would run about 17 hours and you'd rest 6. And these runners, again, they had to be methodical in planning out how this would go. But Cliff, he just kept running. He just kept shuffling his feet. And a few days into the race, all of a sudden word begins to get out that the first runner is a few miles out from the finish line. News crews, journalists, fans, locals, family members all begin to gather at the finish line. Hundreds of people, thousands, to see which professional runner Olympian is going to finish first. And to their surprise, here comes shuffling in his rubber boots and overalls, toothless Cliff Young, the potato farmer. In fact, Cliff wins not by just a couple hours. He ends up winning by 10 hours. They go to hand him the prize money, and he goes, "Prize money? What prize money?" Everyone worked hard, so he splits the money with everyone that finishes. This is how naive Cliff is. But he goes on to set a bunch of records, and people actually reorient how they run these long races called the Cliff Young Shuffle, because he shuffles his feet. So why do I tell you that story? Because when we hear a story like that, an underdog story, someone that has no business winning something, it tells us something. You see, we all want to accomplish significant things with our lives. Every athlete, every coach wants to be great. We want to win. We want to leave a legacy. We want to be remembered, right? But far too often, we don't have the resilience it takes to achieve those things. In fact, spiritually, Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians 9:24. He says, "Do you not know that all the runners in a race run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way to get the prize." Paul's writing this in Corinthians, and he's using a metaphor to emphasize the need for diligent and disciplined focus to finish and receive the ultimate prize. You see, we all want to be great, but the problem is we get in the way by making it about ourselves. One of the things that's so fascinating about Cliff is he wasn't running for a prize. How many times do us as athletes get in the way of what we really want to accomplish? I heard someone say once, oftentimes our strongest desires are not our greatest desires. In other words, the thing that seems so tangible and so immediate, winning a national champion, being a professional athlete, setting a record, those are really strong desires, but underneath them are deeper desires to be seen, to be loved, to be known, to be accepted, to have worth. We try to use circumstantial things to actually meet deep emotional needs. Does that make sense? Jason, how am I doing speed wise? Need me to slow down a little bit?
Let's give it a
Okay.
pause. And coaches, put a comment in. Anything, any questions? Anything you need clarified? You can chat it in, or all right. It's always good to give a little pause.
Yeah, I love interaction. So if you guys want to raise your hand on it, you can do that. Yeah, there you go. I'll try and pause and take any questions or
Arnold. All right,
clarify.
we got Arnold on. Hey, Arnold. Glad you're on. Let's make a little couple shout outs here. Pause. Bill in Kenya.
Hey,
Shout out.
hey,
All you
hey,
joined.
Jason.
Hey, Arnold. All right, we'll keep going.
Okay. So here's what we're gonna build on today and the rest of our time. The key to success in life and in sport is to develop emotional maturity. Here's why. All of us have emotions. Emotions drive our physical and mental self. They produce feelings. And by the way, there's a narrative that oftentimes women are more emotional than men. It's not true. Everyone has the same amount of emotions. But the reality is, most men are more prone to suppressing, numbing their emotions. And so I would say, even in my experience working with athletes, female athletes tend to be way more in tune with their emotions. My wife, way more in tune with her emotions than I am. It's not necessarily a knock on men, but I think there's a reality where, and we're going to get into some of that toughness mindset that so many of us have been taught that's actually not healthy. So here's the reality with emotions and feelings. We all need to recognize we have emotions and feelings. That's step one. But step two is we need to know what to do with them. If you want to raise resilient athletes, or if you're a parent, like I said, I have 3 boys and I'm about to have a 4th boy. If I want to raise resilient children, they need to be able to have feelings and know what to do with them. If you try to raise tough children or tough athletes, they won't be resilient because they'll have to shove all of that down, all these feelings and emotions, to be tough, to overpower what's happening in their body, because our bodies have feelings. So oftentimes I think in our world we have compartmentalized our feelings as if they don't affect our physical being. One of the greatest things I've learned in the last couple of years of working with high performing athletes is those feelings have a direct impact on their physical outcomes. You're telling me if I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm competing out of anger, that's going to directly impact how free, how loose, how engaged, how present I am in the midst of a athletic performance. So this is one of the reasons, though, so many elite athletes burn out before their talent gives out. I see it all the time. You have athletes that are extremely talented, but because they don't have the emotional maturity, they don't know what to do with these emotions. their solution has been just to suppress and keep going by trying to be a greater athlete, by trying to find more in living more of a performance-based identity, that it begins to suck the life out of them, in which sport used to bring life. It now is a drain and a strain on them. And so here's a huge piece where, as coaches and parents, that we've got to be aware of. If we as coaches and parents don't know what to do with our own feelings, we will tell others to stop theirs by shaming them for having them. Does that make sense? Let me give you a great example. A year ago, my 5-year-old starts soccer for the first time. My friend's the coach, a bunch of the other parents we know. And so we show up to the first practice. We're a few minutes late. So all of a sudden I got feelings and emotions. It's like, I'm a little embarrassed because we're late. What are my friends going to think of us? But it's also, there's a reality side of, I'm trying to find my identity through my kid's performance. Now, I didn't realize that at the time. What happens? 2 minutes in, my son is sitting on the field crying because he doesn't want to go. So as he's crying on the field, what do you think I did? What did I say to him? Any guesses?
Stop crying.
That's right. I said, stop it.
Hey,
Get out right now.
That's a good Eastern European answer right there, Giannis.
Yeah, I think it's a great human answer. It's like I went into self-protection mode. My son had feelings manifested in tears. Something was bothering him. Instead of saying, what's the matter? Is everything okay? I immediately went to stop it. I just told him in that moment, suppress your feelings because dad's embarrassed. Get it together. Now, I didn't realize that's what I was doing in the moment. It took me some time later, a couple of months later, as I was hearing someone else share something, I was like, oh my goodness. But here's how I really began to figure out what I just created. The next week, we go to soccer practice. And my son comes after practice. He goes, Dad, aren't you proud of me? I didn't cry. And what he just said to me was, Dad, I performed for you to love me. Do you see that? Now, that might seem like an extreme example, but it's everywhere with the guys that I work with in college. Majority of the guys I work with, athletes I work with, have father wounds. In other words, they have suppressed or been motivated by shame of failure, shame of not being enough, shame of not having the approval of others, that they've suppressed those feelings and emotions instead of working through them to try and find love by being better. That's exactly what I did with my son on accident. And so I got to go back and apologize and say, Mateo, I'm so sorry Daddy didn't listen to. Tell me why you were upset. Why were you crying? And I began to unpack instead of shaming him, which then taught him from now on, I better perform to get my dad's approval and love. I was watching an NBA game this week. I saw the exact same thing. A player turned the ball over with 2 minutes left in the game. Obviously, no one turns the ball over on purpose. His coach calls him over and absolutely starts screaming at him. And I just felt it. I felt so bad for him because think about what that's like. He's got millions of people on TV watching him now get shamed. And all these people in the arena. You think that makes him play more free or less free? But here's what it does mentally. Our brain stores trauma. Trauma can be big, but it can also be these little moments. And when we experience pain, it's gonna remind him, I never want to feel that feeling again, so I better perform better. And we do this in all different areas of our life because our brain can remember these painful experiences. And so here's what I want to do with us today. I want to share with you 4 emotional needs every athlete has and how you as coaches can help meet those needs. It's not going to fix them, but if we can be in tune to these 4 things, not only is it going to uh, help them become better performers, but uh, it's going to allow them to play more free. And that's the most important thing. So let me pause there. Any questions or thoughts on emotions and feelings?
Jay, I'm just gonna highlight the stuff of like when you can't handle certain feelings, how you can't, engage with those of others. You made a line like that.
Yeah.
I've been married now 16 years, but it was probably only about 3 years ago that I became aware of that. Of like that being like, I didn't really sometimes I would almost say I don't have emotions.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my like anyway, it's been a whole process in my life of seeing, oh yeah, all this stuff started clicking. Some of that with T
Yeah.
group. TJ knows about T group. That was actually I was with your wife. I was in that T group. That was a piece of the process.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I feel like this has been so helpful for me as I've gotten more into understanding emotions and feelings because most of my life I think I've just suppressed. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but uh, they were there. I didn't like to feel them, and so it was easier just to push them away. In fact, one of my friends, he's a therapist, and this is how he describes it. Emotions are like uh, bowel movements. Everyone has them. I know you excuse the example, but you won't forget it. Everyone has them, but if you don't know what to do with them, at some point you're going to have a blowout, and it's going to be messy. And so he says, if you're a kid, you don't teach kids how to poop and pee. When they got to go, they're going to go. And they don't care who's watching or what. Exactly what happened to my son. He didn't care who was watching or what was going on. He had emotions and he let them out on the soccer field. The problem is, most adults, if we never deal with our emotions, they're going to come out in big ways as adults. And so let's get in these 4
Oh man,
emotional.
okay, not I can't leave it. But that also means because sometimes when you say we're gonna have a blowout, usually you think, oh, they're gonna, we're gonna anger, it's gonna just come out. But I think the other thing happens, we just die. Like
Yes,
it's not always comes out in this like, oh, here it comes. I think it actually comes out with we're just like a lump on a log, or
we're
we kind
emotionally numb.
of, yeah. I think I'm imagining you can take lives and see both, but
Yeah.
and people can be highly successful. I think what I've also find people can be highly, vocationally successful, but yet still are kind of dead in that regard. Like, it's an interesting thing because just because yeah, the how one looks, their outward appearance doesn't really speak anything into this emotional space.
Uh-huh. And that's what burnout is. You stop feeling. And that's where you'll see it. It doesn't matter what level it is. You'll see it at the highest levels, but you even see high schoolers, college kids. I when I numb myself so much to the point where I stop feeling, it's a scary place to be. And in fact, that's where a lot of athletes even have a hard time walking away from their sport because they've numbed themselves so much that it goes down some dark paths. So, okay. 4 emotional needs every athlete has. These are from Dan Siegel's 4 S's of secure attachment. The first one is safe. Our nervous system is wired for safety. It goes on the defense when it is not. So, just like anything, if you don't feel safe, your body, your nervous system is going to tell you something is off. It can be as simple as having a high fever. I need to take medicine. Or it can be in an environment and a place that you're feeling threatened. So, your job as a coach or a parent is to provide and create a safe and welcoming environment for them to not only develop talent, but also process emotions. Unwelcoming feelings send warning signs to our nervous system, and our heart begins to shut down. Exactly what Jason was just talking about. We begin to numb ourselves if we don't feel safe. Now check this out. Players know, athletes know when they feel cared for versus used. If you work in ministry, it's the exact same thing. Athletes know whether you're trying to do ministry through them or to them. Athletes, they will pick up on your energy and whether you're coaching to them or through them. If you want players to feel safe, we must learn to take a selfless approach to coaching. We can't meet our needs through them. Too many coaches have suppressed and numbed so many of their emotions that they don't realize they're actually projecting their own needs and trying to live vicariously through their athletes to find their own self-worth and purpose. And it's a destructive cycle. In fact, one coach here in America, a football coach, college at the school LSU, just got fired. And since he's gotten fired, there's been all these different athletes, parents of athletes that have come out and told all these stories about how toxic, how unsafe his environment was. So here's what I want to do. I want to pause for 1 second and I want you to share. You can put it in the comment box or share verbally. Name a time you felt cared for versus used.
DJ's answers start coming in. I feel like my experience here is with our international audience, that's just the norm. Like the idea of being cared for is just not a considerate. That is like not a part of the role of a coach. Like I feel like in our culture, it's at least embraced. You should. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
always happen, but stories I've gotten internationally, it's like no, that's not even an ingredient.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Anyone? Oh, there's a couple comments. What about fear? When did that one come?
I can't see a ton of my mind. But even if you just process these questions in your head, I want you to think of that time you felt cared for versus used. How did that make you feel? We all know the difference when someone wants to use us for something. I was talking to a performance coach. He coaches high school and college athletes, and he was telling me I was recently on the phone. He was coaching this high school golfer, and here's a great example of just how innocent this can happen sometimes. Uh, this particular child is trying to get a scholarship to play golf in college. And as they're unpacking and talking through the different emotions and feelings and things, the weight that she's feeling, he comes to figure out, oh, her performance is struggling, not because of the lack of talent, but emotionally, she's feeling this burden that I've got to make I've got to take the burden of the cost of college off my parents. And so her parents aren't directly projecting that, but she has felt this maybe by different comments or things they've said. And so it's no longer a safe environment because she's feeling this pull of, if I don't help my parents, they're going to be disappointed in me. And so he said, I've got to help these parents now think through how little things that they may say or talk about is actually impacting the pressure and weight that their daughter's feeling. You see how simple, and it's an innocent example, but that's part of creating a safe environment where our athletes can feel the freedom to find joy in the pursuit of sport versus the pressure of there's something weighing on this now because it's tied to something else.
And just to add, DJ, with a lot of our, again, internationals, if a athlete makes it to the United States for sports, it's kind of the same pressure, but sometimes it's even magnified because you do become the opportunity for the community. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not even your family, it's like your whole community or every context is a little different, but it's that same pressure um, that's put upon you. Like you're our hope.
Yeah, I meet with a swimmer from Russia uh, who the exact same thing. He would show me some of his texts. His dad, and it's a very black and white color. It's like get it together, go. But there was so much weight on him that he's had such a hard performing because he's not swimming free. It's all about this giant. It's like swimming with a literal weight on your back. There's no way you're gonna be able to carry that. And then the shame though, he would do bad, and his dad would text, "Very, you're a disappointment to our family. You better figure this out. If you waste any more of our money, that shame is just crushing him." Well, so here's an example. I'll give you one more example, and then we'll move to the second one. I was just on the phone with yesterday a professional team, and one of the players was sharing how the environment, they're doing good, they were great last year, but the environment is toxic. It's not safe. And players don't feel like they can talk to the coach, and the coach doesn't feel like he can implement change and make hard decisions with star players because ownership drives everything, and ownership loves the players. Do you see? So you see all of a sudden, if we don't have a safe environment, whether that's a family, a team, or an entire organization, people that don't feel safe are not going to feel seen. And if you don't feel seen, you're not going to feel soothed when problems come up. And if you don't feel soothed, you're not going to feel secure. Those are the other three that we're going to talk through. But as I wrap up the safe one, Jesus was incredible at this. He created safe places for people to come and learn. It didn't matter if they were Jew, Gentile, if they were a follower of Christ or not. He was always creating safe spaces for them uh, to learn at their pace. So let's look at the second one, seen. The first one is safe, seen. Coach the person, not the athlete. The best coaches in the world develop the person first and the athlete second. I see this all the time with coaches. You're teaching all of them the same thing. You may say, we're working on free throws or defense. You may be teaching them all the same thing, but you have to connect differently with each person. This is where I've learned so much, even as a parent. A 5, 4, and 3-year-old. They're all totally different. I can connect with one and they can feel like great. They all react differently to different forms of discipline or correction or even what they need to be filled up. And so anyone that's in a relationship, the reality is we all lead people the way we want to be led. The problem is people aren't us. And in the same way, I think we end up coaching people, we end up parenting people the way that's most comfortable and normal to us. And so if you grew up with a dad or a coach that was high shame, high yelling, high screaming, high, uh, whatever, that's probably what you're going to project on the people that you're around. And so as coaches, we've got to be able to see people as individuals, even though we may be teaching them the same thing. When we see each people as they are with their unique backgrounds, uh, then we can connect with them better and be able to help them. This generation knows when a coach genuinely loves them or if they're just a means to an end. In other words, people know whether you see them or you see right through them. We all have impure motivations. How do we become more aware of these impure motivations so that we can see people? And I would argue, want to see people the way Jesus did. I think about the lady at the well. I think of all these different examples. He didn't see people in their sin, in the worst of them. He still called out truth, right? So we still want to be honest and open. But he saw people, each uniquely created and designed, each with different experiences. And so He was trying to meet the same need in everyone, but he did it differently. I'll give you an example. My wife, she's a perfectionist. I don't care about doing it right at all. So if we're trying to learn the same thing, she's going to feel her natural reaction when she can't do something is going to feel like a failure. I'm not going to care. But if you're coaching both of us and you don't understand that, she's going to feel shame and rejection. While it may work, and it may work for me. So as we begin to see people as individuals, we can begin to see them and meet the different emotional needs or feelings that they have, and then point them in the right direction.
DJ, let's
Yeah,
pause. A question came in. We'll just break it up a moment. When you have to, you mentioned having to, you're teaching something, but you got to coach people
yeah.
differently. So William from Kenya just mentions like, how do you balance between a star player and a weak player? Is it trying hard to be good when teaching? So basically, you do have different levels, and you're trying to teach. Anything come to mind for really working with a star player and for your role player in these settings?
Well, so I would say, and this is the exact phone call I was on yesterday. There's a star player in this particular team who's getting all the attention, and therefore, players know who the star players are, and players pick up on very quickly who gets the most attention. In some ways, that's not a bad thing. It's a reality, but it will be destructive to your team when the star player has more value than the role player. It's destructive to the team. Now, there's a reality side to it. You pay your star players more money. They can bring in more money. They can take you to the next level where a role player can't. But that's where I'm saying you as a coach have to play this fine role in navigating. How do I make sure every player is equally seen, but they can still be seen in different ways? So equally seen doesn't mean equal. There's still better players than others. But as a coach or a parent, I've got to be able to have deep relationships with each one, knowing that they each have different needs. So a star player is going to they're going to experience way more pressure because they're in the spotlight. The expectations for them are higher. And so maybe spending more one-on-one time to learn what are they experiencing versus what your role players are. But you've got to do it at an equal level as a coach. Otherwise, the team will pick up on favoritism. I don't know if that helps
One
a little bit.
from we had Scott Fleming on a past call. He's the national team coach for India, but
Okay.
his biggest advice he gives to other coaches, particularly internationally, is coach the whole team.
Yeah.
Because internationally, well, in the settings they've been, the stars get all the attention, and then the end
Mm-hmm.
of the bench doesn't get any. So that's really, I mean, figuring out how to do it, but really coaching the whole team is such a key concept.
Yeah. And think about it. That's exactly what we're talking about, being seen. How terrible is it to be on a team where you don't feel seen? You're working just as hard, but your talent may not be, or your role may not be to the same level as someone else because you play 4 minutes a game and they play 40. And when you don't feel seen, you lose motivation really quickly.
This might go a little deeper, but what do you think? What is that relational need of being seen? So being seen is important, but is it that like our need for validation, our need for what's your take on I don't know, 'cause I'm just like, it is so important whether you're in
Yeah.
ministry or family. It's like it's almost like all of our world's problems come from people not being seen. You think of like the last kid in a family or something, and they're the loudest or something because they're trying to get their
Yeah.
attention.
Uh, I, I think it stems from a desire to be loved. Our greatest desire is to be loved. And how do we get love in this world? By being seen. In fact, I'm going to wrap up with an example at the end that's gonna hone in on that point. Uh, Here's a question to think about real quick. just internally. Name a time in your life when you felt seen. How did it impact you? Now, Jason and I were just talking about the president of our organization just came to Austin. He was just driving through pretty quickly. He reached out and said, "Hey, I would love to grab lunch." You know how seen I felt? I felt cared for. I felt valued. And so sometimes being seen is as simple as words of affirmation, saying, "You worked really hard today. Hey, I've noticed you're really growing in this area." Especially as men, it can be so hard to compliment or validate others. But that goes so far. When someone feels seen, it leads to confidence and security. Um, Dean
And
Smith.
it costs nothing. That's the amazing thing
Yeah,
about
yeah,
one of the best training tool, one of the best like equipment. What tools training could you buy? A Papa Shot, new weights for your gym. Like there's all these things you could build to have elite performance. But I think I'll just affirm, I think one of the greatest things is absolutely free. It's just knowing how to do it, choosing to do it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, um, I think about Dean Smith, coach at North Carolina for a while, basketball. This is what he said about helping athletes. Your role as a coach. Your role as a coach is develop athletes as humans, give community and fellowship, and use sport as the vehicle to do that. He didn't say make them the best 3-point shooter. He didn't say, uh, make them rich or successful or find them, be the best dribbler or strategy. One of the most successful coaches ever said it's about developing them as humans. Give community and fellowship. We were created for relationship with others. And sport is the vehicle in which we get to do that. You have to care more about the process versus the outcomes. Too often we see right through people because we're so busy trying to meet our own needs through them that we don't see people as humans first. And so what we end up trying to do is just coach talent instead of people. Well, most athletes at some point they've got the talent, but the talent never gets developed because we don't develop the whole person. And too many coaches and organizations get too focused on results and they lose sight of their greatest asset. Your greatest asset is people. But if we were to ask, most coaches, what's your goal? It's all about, we call them third world circumstances, making money, winning a championship, some, athletic statistical achievement. Even in ministry, it's like, how many campuses can you get to? How big is your ministry? How fill in the blank? That's not bad to have goals like that. But if goals come before people, people will always feel used and they'll feel unseen. Here's one of my favorite quotes I've heard lately. We are born into the world looking for someone looking for us. We remain in this mode of searching the rest of our lives. I find that so true with every athlete. What sport once was the avenue as a kid was something that they loved and brought joy. And at some point, because we're created for love, sport moves from this gift that we love to this source of being loved. We come into this world looking for love, and every day we wake up. How am I going to be seen by the world today? I was meeting with an athlete yesterday who's walking through an injury. I said, "What's been the hardest part about that?" And he said, "Not feeling seen at all. I feel like no one cares about my situation." Olympic athlete. He's That's where depression ends up coming in. How often do injured athletes you hear about, they end up self-destructing their life in little ways because injury, they stop being seen. Their whole life they've been known for being something, and when that's taken away, they're crushed. So Yeah, exactly. Most coaches' end goal is to win. I would argue it's the process is more important than the outcome. In fact, the Philadelphia Eagles just said this. Their star players uh, recently, they said, was the Super Bowl everything you hoped it would be? And they said, you know, winning the Super Bowl was actually more disappointing than I thought, because there's this idea in our head that if we can just achieve something, we'll be seen by more, which will fulfill this need that we have. And the reality is, they said the process of winning was what brought more excitement and joy than actually winning itself. I thought that was so fascinating. Okay, number 3, soothe. Soothe means helping them develop healthy coping strategies for challenging times in their lives. Soothing is about the need for healthy comfort, for assurance, for presence, for a sense that their discomfort, their pain, their fear, their anxiety is recognized and acknowledged. See how these all build on each other? We create safe environments by helping people feel seen and soothe. How do we soothe them? By the first two. We're all going to experience pain. We're all going to experience suffering. That's part of sport. Not everyone can win. Every day you compete, you experience highs and lows. If you want to be great, you have to learn to be fully engaged in the moment, heart, mind, and soul. If you want to get the most out of a person, you have to understand human nature. If you want to understand human nature, you have to understand the human heart. And the human heart has really deep needs. The greatest need the human heart has is for love and acceptance. Our greatest need is unconditional love. But our greatest hurdle is we look for love how? Through performing conditional things. That is the life. You ask any of your athletes this week, we find the things we're good at and we pursue them. We find the things we're not good at and we run from them. Because when I can be good at something, what comes with that? Affirmation, validation, significance. And then I begin to believe the lie that I'm someone. Uh, Olympic chaplain Ashley Knoll said, medals can be earned. That's right and fine. But if love is earned, it's not love. We, as coaches, one of the ways we help soothe these deep heart level needs and longings to be loved is helping them understand what love is. Love is, it's unconditional. There's a cost. It's not based on performance. Majority of athletes, and I would argue even coaches, are trying to meet a desire to be loved through a performance-based identity. And a lot of coaches and even sports ministry people, I would argue, they never met those needs as athletes. And so now what they're trying to do is find love as a coach by being this great coach. It's still performance-based identity. Michael Phelps talks about this. Tom Brady talks about this. When their careers ended, they were terrified because their whole life they've been found love through a performance-based identity. Well, now who am I when I can't perform anymore? And so Michael Phelps threw everything into golf, but he wasn't very good at that. So that didn't work to find love. And now he's been on this big mental health kick, which is even a good thing, but it still is I'm going to do a bunch of good to try and get love from other people. And so if you pay attention in your life, you'll begin to see I did the same thing in my life. Because I wasn't the athlete I wanted to be, I found a new career. And what happened is I started ministering and coaching athletes, but I wasn't coaching to them. I was coaching through them to try and meet my own insecurities, my own needs to be loved and accepted. In sports, suffering is a key aspect to developing success.
DJ, I'll
Uh,
just highlight to say I feel like that's almost in the sport ministry space, how easy it is to start finding our worth in who we are ministering to, not who we are. It's like, oh, I'm ministering to this team, or it's fascinating how even in trying to do ministry, we're still fall victim to the same mentality of the performance based identity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and so that's what, when we talk about this idea of soothing, here's a really helpful example. If anyone has kids, when they get hurt, sometimes they get hurt. You know how you soothe them? You kiss it. You kiss a boo boo or an owie. It didn't fix it. There was no medical. When we talk about soothing, means I people want to be seen. And when something doesn't go their way, or they're walking through something hard, or they're feeling anxious or fearful, that's tied to something deeper. And so, as coaches, if you can help soothe the pain that they're feeling, a huge aspect that is learning to listen. Like I said earlier, your star player has needs. Your role player has needs. Your assistant coaches, your GAs, the kids, everyone has needs. How can we, as coaches and role models and leaders, be listeners so that we don't fix, so that we can actually fix the right problem and not fix what we think is wrong, or just suppress it and say, come on, be tough, keep going. Because that's been the mentality of so many of the sports world. Get it together. Don't show pain. Don't show weakness. Part of soothing is acknowledging and having compassion and empathy for people, for our athletes. Athletes who stuff their emotions and feelings, they stop competing to win and start competing not to lose. When I first heard that, I thought, I don't know if I believe that. And then I saw it, Olympic trials. Fear is such a strong emotion. And if you failed in the past or experienced hurt from rejection of a performance based identity, it's easier to numb yourself and not feel, because then you have an excuse to say, internally, I was like, well, I'm just going to try and not lose so I can feel better about myself. Because if I was really trying to win, then I have to feel guilt and shame for not being enough. Rejection. I saw this at Olympic trials last year with a bunch of athletes. That's what happened. They started competing not to lose out of the fear of, if I say I'm really trying, then I'm going to have to feel that pain of rejection. And it's always easier to suppress than to feel. But as coaches, we can help soothe these feelings by helping walk through them. So the last one is secure. Having peace and confidence under pressure. Feeling the freedom to make mistakes without fear. I mean, if you have ever played sports, or maybe even as a coach, when you know you can go out there and it doesn't matter if you turn the ball over, if you miss 10 shots in a row, it is such a freeing feeling. I mean, my wife and I talk about this even with dating. Totally different element, but it's like dating, there's all kinds of insecurities, do they like me? Do they not? Are they going to text me back? We've said, it's so nice being married, because at least I know, even if I suck or I'm a jerk, or, we have tension, or we're going to be there together. We're going to work through this. There comes security. So many athletes deal with, am I going to be here tomorrow? If I make one turnover, am I going to be pulled out of the game? And so what happens? You start competing out of fear to not make a mistake, instead out of freedom, which allows you to be your best self, to be fully present and engaged in the moment. Isn't that what we all want? Security produces freedom. Fear, though, causes us to be self-centered. We become internally obsessed with ourselves. Jim Murphy, author of a book called Inner Excellence, he says, selfless is fearless. If I'm so concerned about my needs, then I'm going to miss my players' needs. If players are so concerned about their needs, their stats, their performance, it's not going to go well with their teammates, right? You're not going to be the best teammate. Selfless is fearless. When I'm secure, I recognize all things are here to teach me and help me. That's a key element as a coach. It's all working for my good. Kind of sounds like a couple Bible verses, right? God is working all things for our good. He has predestined good things for us. What happens is we start to look at things, again, circumstantial. If we win, it's good. If we lose it, It's not good. Results are always changing. Athletes need to know that they are secure to perform well. The problem is we look for security in results and performance, which then produces stress, pressure, fear, anxiety. We begin to perform for self-worth instead of self-discovery. Competition for self-worth, always destructive. Competition for self-discovery, how great can I be? How great can this team be? How far can we go? It's always about discovering. Remember, that's what I said about the Philadelphia Eagles. It was the process of who we were becoming that drove them. It wasn't the Super Bowl that was the most fulfilling element. Part of that's even with kids. If all we care about is them becoming a professional athlete or them, getting the scholarship to school or something, we're 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 not gonna. They're not gonna feel the freedom, and we're not gonna feel the freedom to enjoy them as our kid. We're gonna enjoy them by as well as they're performing. If you can help athletes feel seen, safe, and soothed, they will feel secure. Think about faith. We don't feel secure in Christ because we obey the Bible. Our security comes from our position in Christ, that He knows us and we know Him. He sees us, He provides for us, and He soothes our pain. Security comes through relationship. So I'm wrapping up. It's the last few minutes. That key element right there. Security comes through relationship. What defines human beings? It's not our accomplishments, it's our relationships. And only one relationship will make up and transform all the imperfections of human relationships, and that's Jesus. So what does all of this have to do with resilience? Everything, because the athlete that feels seen, safe, soothed, and secure will be the most free because they're competing not for love, but from love. And so let me close with this story. When the Iron Curtain fell, they expected to go into all these orphanages and find a bunch of kids that didn't have access to food, water, starved to death, in really bad physical shape. And so these non-humanitarian groups went into all these different orphanages, they were blown away. They were shocked because all of these little orphanages full of kids were perfectly healthy. They were well fed, they had water, they had beds, they had a roof over their head. And they couldn't figure out why so many of them had been dying. And what they found out was their physical needs were all being met, but their relational needs weren't. It was silent. If you've ever walked into a nursery or a room with a bunch of little babies, what do you hear? Crying. These babies had cried, but because nobody came and saw them, no one soothed them, they eventually stopped crying and started dying. Do you see what's happening? Our greatest need is not food, water, and shelter. It's relationship rooted in love. And the human heart, apart from love, will shut down if we don't have human interaction. The problem, this is what we're made for, this. We're made to align and connect. But what happens is we'll just find anything that comes close. So instead of human love, deep relationships, we start settling for a performance. I'm going to find love in what I do. I'm going to find love in how much money I make. I'm going to find love in this car that I drive or the clothes that I wear or the approval of others or financial security or a successful resume. The most resilient athletes and coaches are those that are the most relationally connected. Resilient people are anchored in love. You ever heard of fight or flight? Love allows us to fight. It allows us to become resilient in the midst of constant unpredictability. Those with weak relationships run. That's one of the biggest problems in America right now. You see the transfer portal. I'm not saying it's all bad, But there's a theme in which when things get hard, if I don't have deep relationships, if I'm not connected, I'm going to run to something that I think will fill that void in my life. And as athletes, when they stop performing or they're struggling, they're going to try and double down on themselves. What they need is deeper relationships to be seen, safe, soothed, and secure. And as they begin to embrace big moments, or what begins to happen is resilient athletes with deep relationships anchored in love embrace big moments because they know they're not defined by them. So that's how I'll wrap up. Thanks, guys, for listening. I know we went a little long, but I hope there's something there that'll be helpful for you to take away and apply as a coach. Because really, this isn't necessarily just athlete stuff. If you interact with other human beings, these are the four great human needs. And so you can apply those to anything, any relationship.
Thanks, DJ. I
Mm-hmm.
was loaded. There's so much good, rich stuff. I've been on my own journey with this. I mean, particularly the last 3 or 4 years. You mentioned the Eastern Europe thing. I actually got to go to a orphanage in like post USSR world years ago, and it was one of these places where kids weren't held or touched.
Yes. Yeah.
Not only do they stop crying, they stop physically growing.
Yes. I forgot to tell
Which
that part.
you
Yeah.
saw, you would see kids, supposedly they're like 10, 12 years old, and they were physically the size of like a 5 year old. It was like, we went one time, actually, I went back to that same country and but I don't think it's their place they're trying to show the world, but I mean, it was wild. All right. Well, thanks again. Coaches, if you have any comment questions, you can throw those in the comment box. And we'll unmute. It's helpful if you write the question in. We can see it and read it, and then we can have you just ask it too. Martin, welcome. Glad you're on. All right. Ooh, Cujo. Yeah, Togo in the house.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm fine.
I'm fine too.
Okay,
Good to see you.
okay,
Oh, you got a
okay.
cow? Oh, that looks like looks like a gift from Kareem South there you're wearing. Cow. Golden Bears. You get muted. All right. Coaches want to end it here. Okay. Giannis, let's see. Giannis, you want to ask it?
Yes, I can. I think it's like here we have like this like this thinking about like not looking for what is a blessing, but all the time searching for problems, for mistakes, what we do wrong tactically, maybe what was wrong. There should be a timeout, or there should be that, and kind of being like a player and still in the same kind of be like this spectator, or do the coaching like kind of. And sometimes it feels like this thinking about as player, like looking for like what's mistakes or what's and how to get them on the right perspective. It's yeah, like it's yeah, two types of thinking, like appreciating and being grateful, and the other thing is like all the time look for what's wrong. And it's so common here, like looking what's wrong and what's problem and what's bad, and something like that. What do you think about what you can comment like about this?
Yeah. I mean, I've watched European soccer. Everything is negative. uh, um, that's where I think one of the greatest tools to implement is everything is here for my good to teach me and grow me. It's like reframing, because we're not saying wrong doesn't matter. We're not saying growth, but if we only look at things through a negative, if we're always so fixed on the negative, we don't have a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is so key, because if everything is there to teach me and for my good, then I'm never losing. I'm just learning. And it actually, think about how it shifts from negative energy to positive energy. It's in this book, Inner Excellence, I think it's called reframing. We've got to reframe how we see situations. It doesn't mean we don't call loss a loss. That's another end of the spectrum. We don't want to just make everything's positive. But how is everything growth? I think but there's going to be, you're going to have to, it's going to have to be caught, not taught. In other words, you're going to have, in a culture that's not very positive or growth minded, you're going to have to begin to model that. And over time, people will begin to catch on. Because think of it, over time, even when everything is so negative, it quickly drifts into shame, because you're always beating yourself up.
And
And then it's
it's
the cycle, right? Then I try harder, and then it works for a little bit, but then it's not enough. Then I got to try harder. And you get on that cycle of self hate or disappointment, which isn't freeing. But it's what we've been talking. That's why I talked about emotions and feelings. It's all about tough, tough, tough. Have it all together, no weakness. And that's actually so detrimental in the long run.
could you please one more time tell about that circle of the what you said about?
Yeah, I call it kind of the crazy cycle. We get on the crazy cycle where we try harder. When we try harder, it either goes good or bad. If it goes good, it's got to keep going good. If it goes bad, we shame ourselves. So the more shame I feel, the harder I try to not feel that. The harder I try to not feel that, the harder I try and work. The more I work, and I'm tied to circumstances that are some in my control, some I can't. Let's say I play a game where clearly not the better team. Well, if I'm gonna, something is just not my fault that I'm not better. But if I shame myself for that, it's out of my control. So if I just try and have more control, so I don't have to feel that, it's just going to lead me on this cycle over and over again, going around and around. Versus, how do I stop that cycle? Is I got to pause. Okay, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? How can I grow from this? What can I learn and grow from it? And then I apply that again and try and reverse the cycle of negative thoughts.
Thank you.
All right. Arnold from Kenya says, all right, Arnold, you want to ask your question? DJ, and I don't know if they come up, it's written. Sometimes it's you can kind of
Hey,
hear
Yeah.
it.
hi, Jason from from Uganda, not Kenya.
Sorry, I knew. Sorry, slip.
But thank you so much for sharing. It's been a very good session. I appreciate. And my question is, so let me say, as a coach, when you give love, it's show love and you give love, not only to your players. Okay, let me say in this instance to your players, and probably you don't feel like that gets back. You were supposed to do it, I believe so. As a coach, coach from love, through love, and you don't feel like that is coming back to you in one way or the other. maybe in how they react, or how they would approach a certain instance. How would you handle that? And then also, you talked about situations where you feel like you're being used. Um, how do you react in such a situation? Being being a transformational coach, and I feel like, okay, I feel and I recognize that I'm being used in this situation. Uh, how do you react in that instance? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Great question. I don't know. I don't know if I have great answers. Because both those things are so hard, right? I mean, those are maybe two of the hardest things to feel in this world. To be a person of love and not have it given back, that feels like rejection. And then to feel used, right? No one. The times where I felt used, I remember those times. They're formed. I never want to feel those feelings again because they hurt and they're heavy. I guess my best attempt to answer my initial thoughts are: we can't give love to get love, because by nature, love requires a sacrifice. And so people sometimes will say, if I say I love basketball, do I love? I quickly found out when I played college basketball or attempted to for a year. I didn't love college basketball. I loved the idea of being a college athlete and being significant in other people's eyes. So love by nature uh, requires sacrifice. I wasn't willing to. I knew I didn't love basketball the same way because I wasn't willing to sacrifice it. But I think that's where the relationship element that I was talking about, if we're going to be people of love, it's not always going to be reciprocated back. That's why we've got to be anchored with deep relationships that can weather and storm and the storms of rejection when we are uh, giving out love and it's not reciprocated, because that can quickly make us very cynical or resentful or angry or bitter, especially feeling used. That what I think of, I think about Jesus's life. To be honest, it's like who gave out, who was more loving, unconditionally and perfectly, and didn't receive that back. Who got, what human was more used than Jesus? No one. Uh, and so then I'm going to think, okay, how did he do it? Well, he was marked with purpose and in perfect unity, relational unity with God the Father and the Spirit. And in the same way, if we're going to be people of love, though we desire that back, we've got to be anchored in a deeper love that can sustain us for when that is not given back or when people use us, so that it doesn't drive us the opposite direction. That help a little bit? I know I didn't exactly answer it, but I think the key is having relationships that can sustain us.
Oh,
DJ, I
that's
was trying
good.
to say
That's
as a
good.
coach, it is one of the hardest things as coaches, particularly many of you on the call are trying to love your players. But
Mm-hmm.
you have a system, you're trying to love 100 kids that might be in your program, in your academy, but you're running the academy. Like you don't have someone necessarily over you saying, man, Arnold, you're doing a great job with your academy. You're doing awesome. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you and you're solo, most likely. And you might get, people give you thumbs up, attaboys, like, hey, you're doing great, but you're giving so much. I
Yeah.
will say that's just one of the points of this academy, this International Coaches Connect. It's kind of to connect with one another and find people that understand and can speak into each other. I agree with DJ. Ultimately, it's understanding Christ's love for us and having to tap into that. I mean, maybe even more than daily. It's like learning how to tap into that whenever we feel depleted and going back. Um, and I would say there's a graphic we put out on I saw it somewhere else, but it was on our Instagram handle, but it talked about like all the players in line to get like coaching, like all the players are getting all the coaching, and then it's like it has a line of the coaches and who's coaching the coaches, and there's nobody. And I think that's just the reality of the space of being a coach is there's usually no one's really coaching the coaches. And so you're giving and I think it's hard to learn. Oh, I do have relational needs. As you mentioned earlier, DJ, we kind of shut off to that, oh, I have needs. And then we kind of realize, oh, why do I feel burnt out? And it's like, oh, I have all these needs. I'm giving.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just affirm those questions. I got a little harder cut off here. DJ, thanks so much for just being on. And it was all then I was eating it up. I love it. I love this content. I just think this is I love there's another post I put on our AI Instagram called Play Loved. And I think just this idea, there's certain concepts that are just the core of everything. And this topic, it kind of it's a deep well into our heart that everything comes out of our play. And I think while we are looking again at the competing athlete, how to help the athlete compete in freedom, it applies to all of us. Like I'm 45 years old and there's still things right now that I'm like, oh, I want to experience freedom. I'm not operating in freedom because the weights of
Mm-hmm.
life are heavy. Like our challenges are different than in Latvia or Kenya or wherever it might be, but we all have a fear of tomorrow. There's unknowns, there's pressures we don't know how to handle. We don't know how to get through this circumstance or challenges with our kids. Like we don't know the solution. And that's just we don't always abide in Christ in that. We feel the weight. We get weighted down by all these things and stop living in freedom. Coaches, it's been wonderful. Some of you will see. I know there's a couple of you might be coming to Xenia for the International Coaches Academy here soon. And for others, we're looking at targeting a joint November-December date for our next webinar on December 4th. So be in touch. DJ, man, it's awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you jumping on and listening. So learning together.
Thank you.